Okay, good afternoon. It is 3:01, and we will call today's meeting to order. Welcome to the May 24th, 2023 meeting of the Urban Design Commission. My name is Sarah Miller. I'm co-chair of the commission. When called on, applicants and speakers will come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Please do not approach the podium until it has been vacated by previous speakers. Please speak into the microphone and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments, questions, and testimony to the commission. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is unnecessary to repeat testimony previously given by others. Citizens may address the commission on agenda items by responding to chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker's log at the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and/or remove that person from the council chambers. If that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior, please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you parked at the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or the Arts District parking garage immediately south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket for you. The agenda and documents are located at okcprime.gov/public portal. You would then select the Urban Design Commission meeting, then click on an agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Keith, will you please call the roll?
Holmes, Miller,
Present.
Peatone, Blatt,
Here.
Fowl, Nathan, Jarnaco, Dixon Osa,
Here.
Lee Peoples,
Here.
Farnham.
Okay, and we do have a quorum. So our first item is approval of minutes from March 22.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay. Okay. So we need to do a verbal vote. So Keith, if you'll call the roll for a vote.
Miller,
Yes.
Blatt,
Yes.
Cow, Dixon Osa,
Yes.
Peoples,
Yes.
Okay. Approval of minutes has passed. We have no cases withdrawn, no continuance requests. We do have one item on the consent docket.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is for a case at 2120 Northwest 23rd Street, south side of the street, just west of Pennsylvania Avenue. The reason this case is before you is that there were some murals applied to the building, and the building was painted red without any prior design review through certificate of approval. And I do want to remind the commission that the reason this is on consent docket is that we've reviewed it and determined it's in compliance with all the applicable regulations and guidelines that we have that relate to the murals and the painting of the house. The good thing in this case is the building was stucco rather than brick, and so we don't have any issues with going against the guidelines that we have against painting masonry or unpainted masonry. We have no standards regarding paint color in the urban design overlay, so the red color is acceptable. And the Arts Commission did review the murals on the east and west elevations of the building back in February and recommended approval to the commission. So just here to let you know that this item is in compliance with the applicable regulations and design guidelines, and we're recommending approval of the item.
We have, any comments? So does this need to go to a motion?
Okay. I'd like to make the motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District.
Okay, that motion has passed. We do have several items for individual consideration. The first item being UDCA 22-00025 at 2124 Northwest 23rd.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is an item that was continued from the November 16th meeting of 2022. Some of the members here may recall this item. Others who were not on the commission at that time back in November. But this is in regards to a proposed or actually installed ice vending machine that was installed at 2124 Northwest 23rd. Again, on the south side of Northwest 23rd, just west of Penn Avenue. At that time, the commission heard from the applicant about the challenges that they had in locating the ice vending machine. There was some discussion at the commission level about potentially accepting the location of this facility at the corner of the lot if the applicant could come back with some alternatives to screen the vending machine from view without a lot of specifics about how much screening there had to be, or was it going to be invisible or anything like that. So anyway, it was continued at the November meeting to give the applicant more time to come back to staff with alternatives for the design of the screening materials. The applicant requested a continuance in December, and I think January and February as well. At this point, as we described in the staff report, we've gone now 6 months since the November meeting, and per the code, without any significant progress forward on the application, we are obliged to close out the application. However, and in most cases, that's fine because the installation hasn't been made. But in this case, because the installation has been made, closing out the case is not enough because it leaves the vending machine in the location that it's been placed. So we have come back to the commission with a recommendation, and we did do some discussion in the staff report with respect to the fact that at the November meeting, there was a lot of talk about how constrained the site was physically because they needed room for the drive-through and they needed room for the trash and they needed room for vehicles to circulate through the site, and they decided this is the only place on the site that pedestrians would be safe using the vending machine. And in this report, we just kind of came to the conclusion as staff that if it's so constrained that this is the only place you can put it, and putting it here is not consistent with urban design guidelines, and that it doesn't put forth a very good face for the 23rd Street corridor by being out there on the corner for everybody to see, as opposed to being closer in and buried among the front facade of the building like most vending machines are. We've come to the commission with a recommendation for denial because if the site is so constrained that this is the only place to put it, that it probably doesn't belong here at all. So that's our recommendation to the commission today. I believe the applicant is present and would probably like to have some words with you about our recommendation.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name's Holly Hunt with Sam Gresham Architects at 400 Northwest 23rd Street. Yes, basically here to apologize that I wasn't able to bring a good design up until this point. The owner has been tied up in some other projects also along 23rd. He's redoing the whole Guernsey Park area. It's just been really difficult for us to get together and make time to come to a conclusive final screening option. That being said, you know, as Mr. Philbrick mentioned, and mentions in the staff report, that really the only reason this wasn't a viable administrative approval was the location being out on the corner of the site. And after the discussion that we had with the commission, it seemed like everybody was in agreement that, you know, this location would work, and we were really close to an approval. In fact, I think verbally we made an agreement for the location to remain as long as we could screen it. And so I'm hoping that today we, as a commission, can come together and approve this and allow me to work with staff to finalize those screening, and I'd be happy to take any conditions of approval, such as what material, what percentage needs to be screened and from which streets. Also a timeline, just so I can really put some heat on my client to sit down and make time that this is a very important matter and we've got to address it now. Lastly, I'll just say, we talked about this last meeting, but since there's some new commissioners, this was not done without permits maliciously in any way. It was just, I mean, it was installed after the building permit was issued for the main building. My client absolutely did not think that it would require any kind of permits. So it's just kind of one of those things. I drove by one day and was like, what's that? And that's how we got here. So I just hope that while I understand the staff's recommendation for denial, I hope that we can come to a more practical agreement today to allow me to work with staff to develop a great screening option that's going to completely hide this machine. I think landscaping is a great way to do it. We talked about some more permanent installations, like of screening walls and things like that. We're certainly, you know, just like you would a dumpster enclosure, you know, we could build something like that on this site. There's room on this corner, on all sides of the vending machine, as you can see on the site plan. You know, we've got 10 feet in one direction, almost 12 to the other direction on the street sides inside of our property line. So we've got lots of room to do landscaping. We've got lots of room to do, you know, a CMU wall or a brick wall to completely, like an L-shaped brick wall to completely enclose it. So I'd be happy to turn it over to you guys for some feedback, and hopefully we can get to a better agreement than a denial.
I have a comment. Thank you so much for coming today. Do we know what the use of the main structure is going to be?
It's a restaurant, an Okey Pokey restaurant. It's actually his second or third location. But this location will be mostly mobile app orders, so and drive-through delivery options. There's very little seating inside. So, and even we've talked about this, the site was existing, and while there's not great spaces to put this vending machine up against the building due to the nature of the drive-through and the two-way traffic that circulates that existing building, there is quite a bit of space on the parking lot side. So again, I think intuitively that's why he located it there, even without the knowledge that it would need an approval. So yeah, we're just really hopeful that, you know, we can eliminate any need for further tearing up of the slab or anything like that, and we can just, you know, work with staff to get it screened, and so that everybody's happy and It's a beautiful addition to the neighborhood.
So it's currently active, right?
It is installed. I'm not sure if it's, I mean, I've never seen it been in use. It's, yeah, the water lines and electric lines are serviced. The electric line comes actually from the transformer, and the water comes directly off the building. So it's tied into the water meter at the building.
So my question is, if it is operable now, we're not sure, but if it is, how do people access it? Do they drive up or do they walk up?
They drive or walk up. So bags are provided at the machine. So when you put in your money, you can either grab a bag or you can bring your own ice chest and put it up under there. So it is quite important to provide a parking space next to it, or at the very least some space for a person to utilize the machine. And again, that's why this is really the best location on the site without any danger of traffic and, you know, collisions and things like that.
So I guess my question now is, if you enclose it, would people know it was there? Would you need to put signage on top or some sort of signage to show where it was located?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because actually at the last meeting, there was a lot of talk, because I don't feel like everyone felt like it was this big eyesore. I think a lot of people were saying, you know, the whole idea of something like this in a heavily commercial area is to draw attention to it. So as a service, it can be provided. So I think, yeah, there's some middle ground there. I mean, today, I just don't want to face a denial and have to put my client into some kind of citation situation when I feel like just some simple, you know, screening to beautify it, make it a little less obtrusive, I suppose, a little soften the lines perhaps of it, that could easily, you know, fit within the guidelines and their intent. Because again, this is a very commercial area. There's lots of things going on across the street in parking lots. It's a densely urban environment, and retail services is the primary zoning of this space. So again, to me, it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. It's not closer to the road than other things, buildings and other monument signs along 23rd Street. So it's not obtrusively out of a building line or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I actually drove by Guernsey on my way here, and I was daydreaming of Cuffy's and Joe, and so
Yeah, coming soon.
Cuffy's are coming soon. So, quick question. This may be for Michael. I'm not sure, but you mentioned that they were given some time to come up with either renderings or work with you guys on what that enclosure would look like. If we were to vote for a continuance today, what reassurance would we have that that time would not continue to be drawn out, since he is developing Guernsey, still working on that project?
So I think, I'll just say, I think we can continue it to a date specific, to say the next meeting or a meeting 2 months from now, if the applicant needs that amount of time. But I would say it goes on that next agenda, and then at that meeting, you all would have the opportunity to say, okay, we gave you one more kind of round of time, and now it's either approved or denied.
And
That's
I
all
would
my
be fully
questions.
amenable to that. I thought it sounded like we had to make a firm decision today. So I'd be happy to continue it one more time. And this way, again, I can certainly make it a high priority for myself and my client to get this done.
So you originally mentioned that you would work with staff to get something that staff was comfortable with. If we were to continue to, and I'm guessing that it would need to be 2 months, it would not be able to fall on the June docket because we're too close. It'd have to fall on the July docket. But if we were to continue to the July docket, could you work with staff to get
Ahead of
something
time.
that staff recommends approval?
Oh, absolutely.
us,
Yeah,
and
Mike
that
and I
way-
talk like twice a week.
Okay, yeah.
So I'd be happy to do that, yes.
So, okay, so I think that that would be a nice thing for us to do as a condition of our
Sure.
continuance, is that it comes to us with staff's vetting and approval, and then we can make a
Define.
recommendation on that.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Commissioner.
Any comments from the public? Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to continue this item into the July
To the July 26th.
26th meeting.
Very good.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioners.
And that motion has passed. We will move to our next item, item UDCA 22-00031 at 2300 Northwest 23rd Street and 2325 North Youngs.
Give me a minute here. Okay, this is an item that actually has two addresses. This is only listed on the screen as 2300 Northwest 23rd, but it's also affecting existing residential structure at 2325 North Youngs Avenue, which is immediately adjacent to the south of the office building that exists at 2300 Northwest 23rd. This is a project that involves the demolition of the single-family residence on Youngs Avenue, along with the detached garage and all the on-site improvements. And then if that were to be approved by the commission, then it also involves the proposal to basically entirely overhaul the site plan for the existing office building, allow for an expansion, a small expansion of the office building to the south onto the residential lot where the house is being demolished, and also allow for the construction of one drive-through lane with a bypass lane that would exit one way out onto North Youngs Boulevard. Wanted to point out that shortly after we put the staff report out, it was pointed out to us by the applicant that we had made an error in the staff report and identified that this particular residence was within the boundary of the Pennville Historic Neighborhood. After looking into that, after we were pointed out to us, we looked into it and we did find that the northern boundary of the Pennville district is Northwest 22nd Street, about a block south of this site. So I do want to point that out, and we did send an email out to the commission to point that correction out for your consideration. We have done in our staff report an assessment of the proposal to demolish the residential structure. Basically, there's a lot of, I guess, question marks left by the information provided by the applicant. There's a lot of discussion in the submittals they made about, well, first of all, let's be honest, there's a lot of problems with the house. Some of them are structural, a lot of them are cosmetic. There certainly are costs associated with bringing this house back up to code, size of the windows, all kinds of issues associated with the building not being up to the current code requirements. We did ask the applicant if they had any cost estimates that would show us how much it might cost to renovate the structure to meet code, and they were not able to provide that to us. I do want to point out it's not mandatory for the applicant to provide that information. So we've kind of laid out for the commission our concerns about the demolition of this particular structure. We believe it could be considered historic, even though it's not in the historic district, simply because of its age and the architectural style of the building. However, there are arguments that could be made that it's not significantly historic or a historic architectural resource. And so we've given the commission basically a split recommendation that if the commission determines it's significant, then you should probably deny the request for demolition. If you don't think it's an architectural resource, then you're probably okay going ahead and recommending approval of the demolition. And then, of course, contingent upon that, the first decision is the rest of the project, which is items 2 through, I think, 7 in your staff report with respect to the reconfiguration of the existing office site, parking lot, handicap stalls, drive-through lanes, landscaping, so on and so forth. We did point out in the staff report there are a lot of beneficial things that would come out of the reconfiguration of this site, in that there are some pretty unusual driveway locations and driveway grades and driveway access points that certainly would not pass muster in a current situation for a design for a new project. And we are appreciative that the applicant has taken care to address those issues in their site plan and come up with ways to get rid of a lot of that unusual site plan features. So in the end, also there is a variance request associated with this, and that is that there is a minimum 110-foot length for the drive-through queuing space on the drive-through. If you were to, well, it's a little bit complicated because it's not your standard run-of-the-mill drive-through. There's no ATM at the window. There is a remote teller interface where you can send information back and forth through a tube to the teller during the business hours. And then after business hours, there's a drop box for depositors and so on and so forth, making deposits to the credit union. Now, obviously, when it's not business hours in the evening overnight, I guess it's after 5 o'clock, the drive-through lane would easily meet the 110 feet because it would go out into the parking lot on the west side of the building, and it wouldn't be blocking any cars or anything like it's not supposed to, because there wouldn't be any cars parked there. However, during the day, there is a potential for that queue to line up. However, in discussing that situation with the applicant, we came to learn that this credit union is a relatively small one as credit unions go. 2,200 members, I think we said in the staff report. And since this is their only facility and they have no other drive-through facilities, they have no way of gauging the amount of activity they would have in this drive-through lane. However, I think a conclusion in our staff report is that the site is so small on the corner and it has 2 frontages to deal with on Young's and on 23rd that if you were to hold them to the 110-foot requirement, they would have to blow out the drive-through lane. They wouldn't be able to do it because it couldn't be accommodated without the variance. So from that standpoint, we think it's a fair argument to be made that even though 110 feet is required by code, we don't think that this particular facility will necessarily utilize that entire 110 feet, and probably not exactly necessary for this particular project. So from that standpoint, we have recommended that the commission provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment on the variance request for the deviation from the minimum queuing length of 110 feet. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions that the commission may have. I do want to note that the applicant is present and they have a presentation of their own to make. So,
if the applicant would like to step forward, you will please state your name and address.
Jennifer Jackson Lee, and it's 2300 Northwest 23rd Street for the property.
Do you have any comments before we proceed with the presentation?
So it's digital, so hopefully.
you just tell me when to change the slides.
Okay. Oh, this is the beginning. Okay, so you can go ahead. So I just wanted to give you an idea of where it's at. I think you all know it's on Northwest 23rd, which we are dealing with today, it seems. The first one, if you could go back one, is where I've circled. Teachers Credit Union sits there. It's a credit union that serves the public educators in the community. Right beside it is the house that was purchased by them with the expectation of demoing and expanding where they are. So if you can go to the next one. It shows that where it sits, the neighboring ones are all, it's commercially zoned. The neighboring ones are all commercial. They are 2 to 3 parcels deep. And commercial goes 3 parcels deep. This would be 2 parcels deep. They're both C3 zoned. The next slide would show. Oh, actually, I put this in because of the mistake. So they had said that it was part of the Pennville Historic District. I wanted to show you on the National Register of Historic Places that it is not part of it, and like Michael had stated, it starts at 22nd. So I wanted you to get, can you go back? So that I wanted you to make sure that that was pretty notable in what we want to accomplish. The biggest thing we want to accomplish is the demo permit so that we can move forward. I think the design and everything, we've worked with Michael at length, and I feel like that he has recommended that. It's the demo permit that is holding us back and the client back. So well, this shows commercial 3. That's what it's zoned, which is a community commercial district. The next, so the next one I got from the Plan OKC. I've done some research, and the Plan OKC, I'm assuming you are all aware, but it's a policy contained in to inform and guide land use decisions, helping to assure citizens that these decisions are credible and not arbitrary. So this is important because this is considered urban commercial in the Plan OKC. And on their website, it says that urban commercial designates strategic areas where the creation or revitalization of a commercial district will drive revitalization and increase property value in surrounding neighborhoods. So this is a retail credit union that's currently there. So this is saying we want to support that kind of a business. This is the plan put forth. So if you could go to the next one. There's another layer in the planning through the Plan OKC, which was super helpful. It is a retail priority area. So on top of being urban commercial, it's a retail priority area, and it is labeled as revitalize. Off their website, proposals for investment in retail nodes and corridors should receive greater weight, as these areas are critical for the health of surrounding neighborhoods and the city's fiscal health. So that's all speaking to the benefits of what the credit union can do for the area, continue to do for the area. So the next slide, please. So this is the existing site. And I'm trying to answer one of the questions, does it pose a threat to public health or safety? Like Michael said, we had a structural engineer take a look. There were a lot of issues, I think you got that in your packet. And he came to the conclusion that it wouldn't be economically feasible to upgrade it for an occupant. We would also like to say, as is, it's been vacant for 10 to 15 years. Teachers Credit Union has been there for 6 years. They bought it 2 years ago. It's been vacant that entire time. In the bottom right-hand corner is the alley behind the home and the building behind it, and it is an area where transients use the restroom. During the day, they have piled police reports. There has been someone with a weapon that had hit the outside of their building. So what this can bring into the area through our proposal and for what the type of business that it is, they will have security cameras. They will have security around. It will be running a business daytime hours. So if you can go to the next. Okay, so this is just stating what a credit union can do to revitalize the area, which it may be not even a question, but they were founded in 1935. They're well established in the community. The money goes back to the community. They promote the local economic growth. They have a volunteer board of directors, so there's a community involvement. And they have a commitment to the community. I think they want to see it do well, and they, as a company, are growing, and they need to expand. And if they can't do that here, they will have to go somewhere else. So they want to do it here. They were placed here, or they chose here on purpose. So it's not economically feasible to that end. It's not economically feasible for them if they can't grow and expand where they're at. Okay. The next slide shows you our proposal. It's part of your packet as well. And so this shows that it has a one drive up with everything that Michael described. It's a remote teller unit, so you'll be interacting with the teller digitally. It won't be a window there. And there is a night depository as well, but there's no ATM. And you can see the bypass lane. We also have met everything guideline-wise for the UDC for your, in terms of the design. So, and then the last slide is showing a rendering of the proposal of what we are proposing there. So again, I looked at the 3 things that you guys need to decide on, the historical significance, and I was trying to point out that it's maybe has history, but it's not a historical home at this time. It's commercially zoned. It's all neighbored with commercials. It's on a major arterial road. And the viable economic use, I think I've made all the points. So if you have questions, we have the Teachers Credit Union representatives here as well. So.
Questions or comments from commissioners?
Your presentation is really excellent.
Oh, thank you.
And it would make our lives much easier if individuals came up with the clarity that you showed. I already had questions that you reiterated with respect to commercial zoning on both sides for the full depth of the property and basically the configuration of the site. I did have a question about what the depth of the queuing was. I saw 66 and 45 feet in dimensions, and if I take off 11 for a drive lane, it seemed like we were within 9 feet of the ordinance. Whether or not that's accurate, it seems like we are extremely, extremely close, but everything that you presented, and especially those overlays out of the plan, were very helpful. I think in reiterating what you're proposing is really kind of in compliance with the intent of what Oklahoma City is trying to do. So I think that you did a very good job
Well,
in
thank you.
selling that.
It was Plan OKC website.
I have a comment and question. Yes, phenomenal presentation, and it is detailed enough so we can get a good idea of the orientation. You know, fellow commissioners, as far as the home is concerned, you know, I'm in love with a Tudor, but I think we have enough historically significant Tudors in the city to sort of probably let this one go. So my other question about the new development, now I can see that blue building is to the west of this property, right? And so to the south, in your presentation, you show the homes, the single-family homes right behind it. And so my question to you, I remember when Chesapeake Energy wanted to build Class and Curb, the neighborhood, Meadowbrook Acres right behind it, requested some hardscaping and landscaping to buffer the neighborhood from that development. And so in this presentation, I noticed that you have, plans for landscaping and site improvements. It looks like you have phenomenal landscaping already on that site. And I just want to know if you all had any plans to create sort of that strategic buffer barrier.
Buffer between
buffer
the
the
home to
neighborhood.
the south?
Yes.
Okay, we have this shows the wood privacy fence. I think you also have a landscape plan. I took the landscape off. This used to have all the landscape,
Okay.
but I took it off because it got confusing. So you have a landscape plan in your agenda packet. So we do plan on having some trees lining that fence as well. I think there were about 6 of them, especially where that residential home is. So that is the kind of buffer that we have. And I think Michael had mentioned that because that southern property is, I think this is in your packet, it's C3 zoned as well. There wasn't a requirement for as large of a buffer, if I'm correct in that. So yes, this is it. Oh, nice. Thank you. So those are the proposed landscaping, those black circles are trees, and then
Yeah, those are, on the landscape plan that's in your packet, those are identified as either junipers or cypress. And Jennifer's correct that because the site to the south is zone C3, there is no requirement for a buffer, even though it's a residential use.
Thank you.
I do like to make a comment. Again, I agree the presentation was very well. I'm a big fan of urban infill development in this case. I do have a question regarding the issue that staff brought up, which is the drive-through lane that does not meet the standard 100 feet of queuing distance. I'm curious about, the code on, is there different tiers of traffic in this drive-through lane? For example, say a tier 1 would be a McDonald's high use of
I think
traffic,
this is
and
setting
in
a
this case
precedent.
would be a lower, I would say a tier 2 use of traffic. So I want to bring that up, see if we can come to some sort of agreement or adjustments.
So, yeah,
The requirement in the code is that the queuing lane is not supposed to block any required parking stalls. And in this project, I believe the requirement is 12 stalls, but they're providing 15.
It's 12 stalls are required. We're providing 17, and we had already
Right.
thought.
So if you were to look at it from that perspective, and only concern yourself with the 6 stalls on each side of the western parking lot, then they would be closer to meeting the 110 feet, but not quite there. Because they could block the southerly 3 stalls, or actually southerly 4 stalls on the western property line, and then the southerly stall on the east side of the western parking lot. Technically, they could, because those are not required stalls, they could theoretically, per the code, block those stalls with their queuing lane. And like I said, when you take those out of the equation, those 5 stalls, they're a lot closer to the 110 feet, but they're not there, so they still need the variance.
I have one more question. So I thought I saw this in your packet. So the residence is directly south of the subject site, west side of Youngs Boulevard. Those are zone C3.
C3.
The one lot to the south of
Just
the
one
house
lot.
that's being demolished is still zone C3.
We say a lot, but there's a structure there, right?
Yeah, there's a
That
house
structure.
there. I'll go back, well, I can't go back.
So it's
to-
okay, Mike, I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that. So that is a business, it's commercial use?
I
I'm sorry,
don't-
am I missing C3?
I don't think there's a business. I think it's a residence.
We actually have quite a few neighborhoods that are zoned all sorts of things that are not consistent with the current use, but at some point in time, the city or some other entity requested or applied that zoning to those properties. And you'll see it a lot in areas like this that are along, an arterial street, a major commercial corridor where that zoning kind of crept in.
Yeah,
It's on 30th and Broadway and areas like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the properties there have ever converted to that commercial zoning. That's just how they were zoned at some point in time.
okay, so that makes sense. So the uses of it right now, are there people living in these houses?
I'm Grant Weiland, the former CEO of Teachers Credit.
You come up and speak into the microphone for us, please, sir.
Jennifer. My name's Grant Weiland of 2300 North 23rd Street. I'm the former CEO of the credit union. I was the one that submitted the application to Michael. The house is, I believe it's Airbnb right now, so nobody, or they rent it monthly as use. We have talked with the owners, and they're excited about our development with the credit union. I showed them the initial plans, so they're excited about it. We knew the gentleman that lived there prior to his death, and then we've made friends with the company that renovated the houses, and because he owned both houses, he owned the directly to the south and the second one to the south. He owned both properties, and if you look on the map, it's weird because the backyard for both of those properties is 1 yard. So he owned basically it would be from our property here, it'd be the third house and the second house. And his sister lived in the second house, and it's one big backyard for both houses. So again, I think they rent it out monthly, and then I think they're trying to sell one of the houses, but the one directly to the one that we're proposing to tear down would be right now it's an Airbnb property, I believe. So.
Thank you for that clarification.
Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak? Any other comments from commissioners? Do we have a motion?
Is there anybody from the public? Okay.
I would make a motion to determine that the existing residential structure is not historical or architectural resource, does pose a threat to public health and safety, and does not have a viable economic use, to approve items 1A and 1B on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, that motion has passed.
Yeah, and I believe we need a separate motion to,
Commissioner Peoples?
yeah, sorry.
Before you go on this, I want to point out kind of probably a little bit of a technical glitch on the way this third recommendation is structured. It says if items 1A and 1B are approved, the commission should approve the application. What it really should say, it should approve items 1C through 6A.
Okay. Can staff amend my motion to reflect what staff has proposed? Thank you. Okay, so the next motion would be for the variance, is that correct?
So
Okay,
I think you made motion 1
yes,
in the staff report, which covers the demolition. We then need to go to motion 3
okay,
for the new construction.
okay,
And I think that's what Michael was referring to.
Okay, okay,
To
I see.
include those other items.
okay,
And then also a recommendation of approval to Board of Adjustment.
okay. So I would move to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the minimum queuing distance requirements.
I'll second the motion.
That motion has passed.
Are we finished, or do we need any additional motions? I'm not too clear from the staff report.
I think we need one more
Okay.
to provide recommendation of approval to Board of Adjustments.
Right. Okay. I will move to make a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the minimum queuing distance requirements.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and that motion has passed as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. That moves us to our third case. UDCA, is that me? UDCA 230003 at 1929 Northwest 23rd Street.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item before you is for a residence or office on the north side of 23rd Street, just east of Pennsylvania Avenue. Hotbed of activity, apparently. And the item before you is a case where the applicant had put up a sign, and painted the building over unpainted buff brick, changed the windows out, and then poured a lot of concrete both in the front of the building and in the rear of the building, and constructed an ADA ramp at the front of the house for the ADA stall that they created in front of the house. This happened well over a year ago, and the applicant or the property owner was cited by code enforcement, and they did file an application last year for this work, but the application kind of ran out of steam. We just couldn't get a complete set of application materials to process the application at that time. So in accordance with the provision we mentioned earlier about no forward progress after 6 months, we went ahead and closed that application out and then refiled the code enforcement proceedings against the site. That prompted the applicant or the property owner to file a new application this year for the same work. And we have been working with him since he filed, I think in April, it might have been this year, to get all the materials again that we need to accurately process this application. We did get some of the information we needed, but we have not gotten some of the most important information we need. Basically, the main thing that we're looking for and still lacking is an accurate site plan that dimensions the property lines, accurately locates the house and the parking stalls on the site, and dimensions all of those features on the site. So we brought this to the commission with a recommendation for continuance to hopefully prompt the applicant to provide us the needed materials so that we can bring this back for a recommendation at a future date once we have all the material and have had an opportunity to assess those materials and give you organized recommendation for the project. By way of background on this, the painting of the house is kind of a lost cause. The ability to remove paint from this type of brick and not damage the brick is a very slight chance that that's even possible. So when we encounter cases like this, we pretty much have to let the painting of the brick go. But we do need to get approvals for the changing out of the windows, and we need to address the massive amount of concrete that's been poured on this site. And our recommendation is to remove the concrete that's been placed in front of the house, as well as the ADA ramp, because the applicant has told us he plans to revert this back to a residential use, and therefore the reason that the ramp was put in, we believe, in the first place was because it had been converted to a commercial business and they needed the ADA access. Now it's going back to residential. We think that's appropriate to remove that facility. But that's neither here nor there for today. We can discuss that when the application comes back before you with a complete set of accurate plans. We've recommended continuance.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Someone like to just state your name and address, please?
29 Northwest 23rd Street. My first time here, I have no idea what I'm doing. But so in 2020, that's when I bought this property, and I did the changing the paint and the window in May. I bought it in May, so we got everything done by September 2020. And I did find out over the weekend that anything that we done to the property before the commission, the urban design overlay over the district area should be, what do you call that? Should be unaffected because we got everything done. We done that before the commission before the UCD got commission. So I'm here to see if we can dismiss our code violation because we got everything. I mean, we done our improvement before to the commission what in effect. And like I said, I did find out over the past weekend that the urban design district didn't go into the effect of that area until December 2020. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, very sensitive. Hi, I'm Nick. I'm just assisting the applicant because this is their first time coming to the commission. So it was my understanding that they completed the work before the UCD actually extended across 23rd all the way to Villa, because I thought that the commission
It's been there since 2006.
Oh, 2000. Okay, because I have from the Urban Design Commission 2020 proposal guide that they had an effective date of April 2021. So I wasn't sure what that was referring to, if that was referring to the whole commission. It says proposed zoning amendment, urban design overlay commission.
It's the Urban Conservation Overlay District, totally different district.
Okay. So that answers that question. But the applicant, did this work. They weren't sure of what was needed to be done. They didn't know that they had to go before the board to do any of these designs. But just to clarify some things, so the zoning of that property is O2 as it stands. And on the, if you go onto the tax account on the county assessor, it's registered as commercial property. And so it's been a commercial property. He operates his private chiropractor office outside of that. And they wanted to make it more accessible, which is why they poured that ramp and poured enough parking in the front so that, a van or someone that would have some kind of disability that would need that extra space, they can go into the front, they can park, they can get out comfortably, turn around, and then leave safely without kind of getting into a jam or even backing out onto 23rd Street, which would be a horrible, horrible thing. So to back out into the property and be able to leave the property safely. There was mention in the report about the door being changed. The door was actually not changed in the property. The previous owners at some point, I was trying to flip through the pictures and find it, but it was done maybe 20 years ago. They put a piece of plywood over the door and it covered the door, and the applicant just took the plywood off, which is why it looks like it's a new door with a sign cut out, but it's the same door. They just took the plywood off the front door. So the door hasn't changed structure, or there's no structure change. The door hasn't changed. The applicant did change out the windows, it appears, but and they can get the plans for those. But we just wanted to approach the commission and see kind of what's the way forward, because we are unsure about what is the direction that needs to go. Do we need to, rip up? Do we need to make maybe landscaping in the front, or is there a need to be some certain setback, or kind of what is the commission's recommendation for this?
There's a section in the report for your consideration that we do acknowledge the property is zoned O2, and there are provisions in the code that regulate the conversion of structures, and that there's a section in the report that discusses that. So any properties that were non-residentially zoned prior to July 9th, 2002 are subject to these provisions, and this site has been zoned O2 since 1963, so it is subject to these provisions. And two of the main things are that all parking shall be located behind the rear wall of the main structure, and no portion of the front yard other than the access drive to the parking area shall be paved for parking or vehicle maneuvering. So those are two things that pertain to the parking that's been provided in the front yard that we're kind of hanging our hat on in terms of proposing that those things be removed and returned to their previous condition, although hopefully better than their previous condition because it wasn't much before this anyway. But anyway, those provisions do apply to the parking in the front. As for the parking in the rear, we don't have any regulations that prevent you from paving your entire backyard and using it as a parking lot. But if it is going to be used as a parking lot, we need to have accurate dimensions for the parking stalls, the drive aisles, and everything else that goes along with that. We would probably not be looking to require the parking lot landscaping because it's not a commercial. If it's going to be residential and not commercial, we would not apply the commercial parking lot landscaping regulations to that parking lot at the rear. But again, we would, since the ADA stall in the front of the house has to go, we also believe that the ramp that's associated with that stall should go as well.
Just one more comment on that. Thank you for the thorough report and everything. The driveway on the right side, you can kind of see it in the top right photo. But in the report, they also mentioned that there would need to be a variance because the driveway isn't large enough to be commercial, which is true, which is why the parking was put in the front, because it's very difficult to fit a larger vehicle through that driveway. So if the applicant expressed they're wanting to keep it as commercial, which we would have to apply for the variance for the driveway, but that would also kind of clear up the ability to get a larger van or vehicle through that backyard, which is why there's that parking in the front, so they don't have to try to squeeze and potentially hit the structure or hit the neighbor's fence.
I think one of the things that's going to really assist you in a successful application is to get a consultant
Okay.
to actually draft up the plans that are necessary so that you know that you've got the correct dimensions, you've got the correct lot layout, and also so that the components associated with the ADA are compliant with the code.
Okay.
Your parking spaces, your access aisles, your ramps, your rails, all of those things are going to have some pretty specific requirements for a commercial property. And the best avenue for success for you will be to have somebody who does this on a daily basis, actually draft this up in a manner, and whatever requirement for that individual would be, whether it needs to be a licensed architect, whether it needs to be some kind of a planner, whether an engineer could do it, that individual could then get you a set of documents that could assure you a degree of success. That's going to be difficult to obtain in the absence of that kind of a professional.
Okay.
I should ask, because the current recommendation is for continuance. If that is the ultimate recommendation of the board, typically that's something that would be considered by you.
So they would continue it 2 months, right?
I think that that's probably the best scenario, but you, again, if you're going to retain a consultant to assist you with documenting this, you're going to want to ask them, how long will it take them to get the document that you need and relay that?
Yeah, to be on the July 26th agenda, we need your plans, and we need to have time to make sure they're complete and accurate by the 27th of June.
Okay, so then about a month.
Yeah, that's
What-
just 3 days. Oh, no, that's the month. Okay.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Can we continue to the next one so I can help the applicant get a, yeah, thank you. So
To
that would
August?
be 3 months, August?
What's the date of the August meeting?
24? Don't know.
It is August 23rd.
Thank you.
If I recall the procedure correctly, this is one of 2 continuances, just in case. Okay, perfect, yeah.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
We pulled up the map, look at the street view, and I thought I'd seen this, but there's a home, I can't tell if it's to the east or west of this property, that is paved in the front with a ramp. So,
I think we described in the staff report that a lot of the homes to the east of the site have a lot of the same improvements that Mr. Huang has put on front of his property, but those were all done probably prior to the installation of the UD overlay, and there's no recourse for us to go back on those properties.
When did that come into effect by chance?
I'm sorry?
When did that come into effect, the UDO overlay?
I'll get you the date.
Okay,
If and when those properties were to come in to make additional improvements, then we would have the opportunity to have them remove some of those elements. But yeah, if they predate the commission and the overlay, and they haven't done anything to make changes to those features, then we don't have the ability to make them remove those.
you know, perception is reality, and so when I see the context of these homes, you know, if I were you, I would think, oh, look at the ones around me. I could probably do this and with no problem. And so, you know, I know we're here to make a decision based on the codes and recommendations, et cetera. But I mean, I can understand why that happened. But I agree that you may want to get a consultant to back up your claim, but precedent is clear and context is very clear. My question to you is that eventually you want to convert it back to a single-family residence or owner-occupied dwelling or whatever, not a business, but a home where people live. Is that correct?
Well, I intended to go back to the office again, convert it back to the office.
Oh, convert
Yeah.
back to the office.
Leave it back, yeah, leave it as is for the office, yeah.
guess those are just comments, not necessarily a question. But so right now, it's
It's an office.
it's an office, and you want to convert it to
I want to keep the way it is.
keep it. Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
Yes.
misunderstood that.
Yeah, sorry, just it was a little confusing when we were reading the staff report, is that in there it mentions it's a single-family residence, but all the documentation we could find, and even on the original MLS listing, it said it was commercial. So that's why we didn't know which direction we needed to go. If we needed to go, okay, just convert it to residential, or keep it commercial, we weren't sure, yeah.
Do we have any members from the public that would like to speak? No. Any other comments from commissioners? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to continue the application in order to allow the applicant added time to prepare and submit all the requested information necessary to process the application for the requested improvements. Direction should be provided to the applicant to provide all the requested information and revised plans to staff no later than July 27th, in order to bring this matter before the commission at the August 23rd meeting.
It would be July 25th.
July
Oh,
25th.
sorry.
We have
Sir, can we get your last name and have you sign in on our sheet there? Yes,
Yes, yeah.
so we have a record of who spoke.
Do I need it for the verbal record as well, or just the written record?
Yes, if you could tell us,
Yeah.
speak to the mic and tell us who you are. Yeah.
Yes, Nick Tran for 1929 Northwest 23rd Street.
Thank you.
I've seconded the motion.
Okay, that motion has passed. So your case has been moved, we'll continue to the August meeting. Okay. And then that moves us to our final case for individual consideration, UDCA 23-00011 at 719 North Francis Avenue.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is for a residence located at 719 North Francis. This is just at the corner of North Francis and Northwest 7th Street. It's a three-ish story house with a lot of interesting modern architectural detail. And the applicant has come before us today with a request to install solar equipment on two segments of the roof. One is on a sloped portion of the roof that is on the western edge of the residence, and the second is over a flat, level canopy, steel canopy structure that sits over I guess a third-story patio deck. What we prepared for you in the staff report is an explanation of the fact that under current regulations, solar panels are or have been determined to be mechanical equipment. And under the regulations that pertain to the DTD 1 district, which is where this house is located, mechanical equipment is supposed to be screened. Initially, we had a hard time with this one because really the only place that we believe these panels would be visible would be a 300-foot view from North Classen Boulevard. And we debated internally amongst ourselves that if you're driving north on Classen Boulevard, your eyes should be on the road and not 300 feet to your east. But nevertheless, if it is visible per code, it does need to be screened. And so we struggled a little bit with the fact that in most cases, when you say screening, you're talking about putting up something in front of something else to block the view. And that's what we were looking at initially, and obviously a lot of people have objections to screens with more screens. But the bottom line is, we looked at this, and the applicant gave us what we believe to be accurate renderings of what the installation will look like after installation. And after having reviewed those renderings as compared to the current condition of the house viewed from the same location, which is basically, I don't know, 100 feet or so west of the site from the alley, we believe that these installations, the solar panel installations, have been designed and sited and mounted in a fashion that makes them look like part of the house, in the fact that the architecture of the house is a modern architecture, like a lot of houses in the Cottage District. It actually provides a lot of opportunity to blend into that architectural style. And typically, if something has been screened, it would not come to the commission because it would be compliant with the code. We felt it was important that because we had made this interpretation at the staff level that designing it to disguise it as elements of the house is a form of screening, we felt it was important to bring that interpretation before the commission to make them aware of the fact that that's one of the ways we're leaning with respect to this particular application. So given that at least we've made the determination at the staff level that these solar installations appear to be screened because they've been disguised to look like elements of the house, and we've deemed that to be a form of screening, we are recommending approval of this application in accordance with the applicable development regulations and design guidelines. And that completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
I'll tell you, I've had the most fun trying to identify where the solar panels are on this house. And so maybe someone can point that out to me. I'm looking at the renderings or the photos, and they've integrated them so well. Maybe I'm missing them.
I'm sorry?
Looking for where the
I
solar.
wish I had an arrow or a, yeah, Michael's got an arrow.
Okay, so do we have the photo sim available?
Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen.
I love the Cottage District because it's like the
Okay,
Wild West.
This is what it
There are
looks
no
like right
cottages
now
left, but-
from the west. And the first bank of panels would be on the slope of this western edge of the roof.
Okay, so they have not yet been installed.
This does not show them installed.
Okay, I'm sorry,
And they
I
have
missed
not
that. I
been
thought I
they have
heard
not
that
been
they've
installed
done a
yet,
good
no,
job of
no.
okay.
And then, I don't know if we have a shot.
And they're gonna be on top of the roof, not on the side of the house,
No, it'd be on the top.
right? Okay,
On the top of this slope, but not very far from the edge of that roof element. And then I don't know that we have a photo.
I think
that
Katie's trying to
captures-
pull up the rendering
Yeah,
we
the
put together.
photo sim would give us a better view of
Okay.
what we're talking about. It shows a before and after of the installation.
So, good afternoon. My name's Corey Bates, 1516 Northwest 36th Street. I do want to first take a moment and thank Michael and Katie for their patience with me on this one. Like Michael said, there was a lot of dialogue around this. Obviously, solar is a new, more common thing that's happening, and so how it's interacting with the guidelines is generating a lot of discussion. So I appreciate staff's willingness to work with me, put up with me. I know Katie deals with me beyond UDC as well around this, so it's been great. We are, like Michael said, the solar panels are planned to be installed at 2 roof surfaces. The first is on top of that sloped metal roof. The panels are black on black, and they would sit about 6 inches above the roof surface. The second installation is on top of the existing steel frame on the roof deck, and you can see in this photo a beam that's running across that's currently holding like a red fabric tarp. There are 8 panels that would sit on top of that, creating a more solid canopy condition. Even if we had the the drawings, I can, oh, there we go. Yep, so that's it right there. So you can see that thin black line that now sits on top of the gray metal roof. The solar panels themselves are laminated glass products in a aluminum frame. And here the frame of the solar panels is black, so that's why you get that, that thin black line, that profile there. And from this angle, really all you're seeing is aluminum. And so then when we were talking about screening, it's what would be an appropriate screening element? Are we screening aluminum with aluminum kind of thing? So you really are only seeing the frame of the panels. You're not seeing the photovoltaic cells, even though they are black on black as well. But that's our rendering of what it would look like.
I think one of the things that's really interesting here is intent of the ordinance.
Yeah.
Intent of the ordinance is to address mechanical elements that require access for maintenance, moving parts, something that needs to have a person up there, or an element that expresses itself in the vertical with some kind of a mechanical aesthetic. This is no more impactful than a skylight. It's no more impactful than a piece of trim or a coping on a roof. So from the intent of what you're screening, I completely agree. I'm actually really impressed with the creativity to come up with a way to find the answer yes within the ordinance, both for the fact that we're addressing this current, but also it's going to give us some guidelines for success in future cases of similar, in a similar nature. So I completely agree, and I think that this is a great project.
I also agree and appreciate staff's working with applicant. I think, you know, the next time that we revise the ordinance, I think this should be changed or looked at seriously. We shouldn't be screening something that needs sunlight, obviously. So hopefully we can look at that the next time this gets revised, and I would definitely support approval of this application.
Do you have any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
I'll second. I think, no.
I may beat you to it. But
You beat me to it, great.
And that motion has passed.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, that moves us to other business, pending street improvement projects.
Yeah, I need to apologize because I think we forgot to tell Michael Clark he had to be here today. But anyway, we did want to get something in front of the commission to let you know, give you a heads up that there are a fleet of street improvement projects that affect properties within the Urban Design Overlay District, and those would include Plaza District, Paseo, and North Walker Avenue. 3 different projects, and we are working with Public Works internally to make sure that their plans are consistent in whatever way they can be with the regs and the design guidelines that apply in the Urban Design Overlay District. We can have Michael come back at the June meeting, if there is one, or whatever next meeting we have, to give you a more comprehensive overview of the 3 projects we're talking about. I think that, well, I think if you've been in Plaza recently, you know a lot of the work has already been going on. And unfortunately, the design bid process for public works projects has its own mindset, and it doesn't always necessarily jive with our time set. So ideally, that work would have been approved through a CA before the work started, but we're working the best we can with our own Public Works Department to get everything copacetic as soon as possible. With respect to the other 2 projects, I think they're talking about Paseo starting in June or July, which means they're going to have to be back before us pretty quickly. And we have made a lot of progress, a couple of screen checks back and forth, getting things corrected with Public Works on that particular project. With respect to Walker Avenue, there's only a very small part of it just north of the intersection of 23rd and Walker, and then it transitions into the HL overlay from 24th up to almost 28th. So that's another section of the street improvement project that will go to HP instead of Commission. And then above 27th, it transitions back to urban design for the Paseo piece. And that would be from, like I said, around mid-block between 27th and 28th, all the way up to 29th. And then after 29th, it goes back to HL up to 30th. So there's bits and pieces moving around in all these projects. And like I said, we are cooperating with Public Works Department to get their plans in order so we can bring CA before you for your consideration. I'm not sure it'll be on the June agenda, but for sure I think we'll be ready to go in July.
Okay. That doesn't need a motion or anything, right? Okay. There are several items on the administrative approval report.
Yes, Madam Chair. That basically is a reflection of the fact that we canceled the April meeting. So it's basically 2 months worth of AAs as opposed to 1 month. If anybody on the commission has any questions about any of the 9 items on this administrative approval report, we're prepared to fill you in on whatever questions you might have. And then I don't think that, Katie, we don't have any comments from planning staff for today, so.
Okay. Any comments from commission members? No? Then we have our next meeting date set for Wednesday, June 28th. Is that
correct.
still on?
Yep.
Okay. And that concludes our meeting for today, yes? No?